You're offering me a job? My father blinked, his voice cracking like he'd swallowed a decade of disbelief. We stood in my office. No, my empire. Framed certificates lining the wall, sunlight dancing across the hardwood floor, and the gold-plated nameplate on my desk. Emily Carter, founder and CEO. He looked smaller than I remembered. His suit hung loose on his aging frame, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. 10 years ago, he told me I was wasting my time, that my ideas were cute, and that I'd come crawling back home the minute I failed. I never did. And now here he was, in my building, looking at me for direction. I breathed in, slow and steady. Do you want the position or not? I asked. He nodded, hesitant. I smiled, but not with joy, with closure. This was the moment I had never let myself fantasize about until it became real. My name is Emily Carter. I grew up in the southern suburbs of Dallas, Texas, where the houses looked the same and the expectations for girls were even more identical. From the outside, it all looked perfect. White picket fence, Sunday church, family barbecues. But behind closed doors, my life was a balancing act between silence and proving my worth to a man who never believed I had any. My father, Thomas Carter, was a man who measured success with titles and salaries. He was a regional manager at an insurance firm, and he wore that badge like a crown. My mother, Dana, stayed quiet, folding laundry and keeping peace, even when the tension thickened like Texas summer heat. From the moment I could talk, I was curious, constantly sketching, building mock storefronts out of cereal boxes, asking questions about business signs on the road. I remember once asking him what LLC meant, and he just chuckled and said, "That's adult stuff, sweetheart. Not something you'll need to know." He meant it. When I was 7, I hosted a lemonade stand for the entire summer and made $183.47. I tracked every penny in a glittery notebook, created a buy one get one free weekend deal, and even partnered with the neighborhood kids to deliver cups to houses with older folks who couldn't walk far. When I proudly showed my dad the notebook filled with earnings and ideas, he raised one brow and smirked. "That's cute, Em. But let's not get carried away thinking that makes you an entrepreneur. Stick to school." I was crushed, but that moment burned itself into my chest, not as pain, but as fuel. All through school, I excelled in math, art, and marketing competitions. But he barely looked up from his phone at award ceremonies. "Grades don't mean much in the real world," he'd say, while nodding proudly at my younger brother, Kyle, who wanted to go into finance. Kyle was the son he always wanted. Quiet, structured, male. In our house, ambition was masculine. When I told my dad I wanted to go to UT Austin for business school, he scoffed. "Business? That's for people who can take pressure, Emily. You get too emotional. Pick something safer, maybe teaching or nursing." But I applied anyway, and I got in. I worked 2 jobs through college. I folded sweaters at a local boutique by day and waited tables at night. While my classmates partied or relied on family funds, I saved every dollar. During sophomore year, I started a side hustle helping local boutiques with their online stores. I noticed none of them had proper websites or knew how to manage e-commerce. So I started offering to design them websites, write their product descriptions, and link their inventory to platforms like Shopify and Etsy. I called it Shop Savvy Solutions. It wasn't much at first, just me, a borrowed laptop, and endless cups of coffee. But within a year, I had 5 paying clients and glowing reviews. I'd come home for Christmas and hear my dad say things like, "You should probably focus on something stable. That internet stuff is a hobby, not a career." He hated when I talked about clients or contracts. He'd interrupt me or change the subject. Once at the dinner table, he said, "It's embarrassing when people ask what you do and I have to say, she builds websites for tiny shops. Just get a real job, Em." But I kept building. By senior year, I hired my first freelance graphic designer and expanded to 10 clients. I created branding kits, marketing strategies, and social media content plans. My professors used my work as case studies. I graduated early with honors and turned Shop Savvy Solutions into a full LLC. I didn't tell him when I filed the paperwork. I didn't even tell him when my company hit its first six figures. I remember the night I quietly celebrated by myself, eating a microwaved brownie in my tiny studio apartment, wrapped in a hoodie, watching the numbers on my screen with tears in my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because I had done it. Alone. After graduation, I moved to a modest office space with 2 desks. I hired a part-time assistant. My clients doubled again, this time including regional clothing lines and niche beauty brands. When I landed my first national client, a subscription box service for indie products, I cried in my car for 20 minutes, called my mom, and didn't even bother telling my dad. What was the point? Every win I had was invisible to him. Until 2 years ago, when the pandemic forced his company to shut down their local office. After 30 years, he was laid off, pension delayed, benefits gone. He called me out of the blue one afternoon. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. "Emily, I heard your business is doing all right. I was wondering if you knew anyone hiring? I have experience in team management and sales." It was quiet for a long time. I didn't know what stunned me more, him asking me for help or the fact that I wasn't angry anymore. I'd spent years trying to prove myself to a man who couldn't see beyond his own shadows. But now I was light years ahead, and not because I beat him. I didn't answer him right away. When my dad first called asking if I knew of any companies hiring, I told him I'd check around. That was my buffer. I needed space. I needed to sit with the irony. This was the same man who once said I wouldn't last a year in business. The same man who mocked my website designs and refused to acknowledge my LLC filing as a real job. And now he was in need. I gave it a week. During that time, I discussed the situation with my team, mostly to prepare them for what might happen. None of them had met him, but my assistant, Tara, had heard the stories. "You're sure about this?" she asked one morning as we reviewed resumes. "I'm not sure about anything," I admitted. "But I am curious to see how this unfolds." I invited him to the office for an informal conversation. Not an interview. I didn't want to call it that. He arrived in a slightly wrinkled suit and tie, gripping a cheap leather folder like it held what was left of his pride. I watched from my glass office window as he signed in at reception, a little unsure of himself in the modern space. He was early. Of course he was. I waited until exactly 10 a.m. to call him in. Let the power dynamic settle. He stepped into my office, eyes darting around, probably looking for something to criticize. But there wasn't much. Everything was polished, minimalist, and professional. My name on the door gleamed. "Nice setup," he said stiffly, sitting down. I nodded. "Thanks." There was a silence. Not heavy, just strange. "So, you're the CEO?" he finally asked. "I am." "And this company, you built it from scratch?" I didn't answer that. He knew. He cleared his throat. "I've got 30 years in sales. Team leadership. Cold calling. I can manage pipelines and help grow client accounts." He laid a resume in front of me. Typed. Neatly formatted. His old company's name still proudly sitting at the top. I studied it for a second, then leaned back in my chair. "Dad, you know I'm not hiring for sales leadership right now." He blinked. "I thought maybe you could make an exception." "I need work, Em. Something decent. I've got interviews lined up, but nothing solid yet." "What I need," I said gently, "is someone who can assist with internal documentation, invoice tracking, and project timelines. We lost our operations coordinator, and the admin side's getting heavy." His expression stiffened. That wasn't the leadership role. It wasn't what he expected. "It's not glamorous," I continued, "but it's honest work. Flexible hours. Good pay." He looked torn, like he was choking on the reality that his only lifeline was coming from the daughter he never once believed in. Then I reached into my desk drawer. "Before you decide," I said, sliding a crisp folder across the desk, "you might want to see this." He opened it slowly. Inside was a collection of milestones, press clippings, a snapshot of our quarterly growth report, and front and center, a recent partnership contract between Shop Savvy Solutions and one of the nation's largest retail tech accelerators. We just closed this last month, I said. The partnership comes with a funding round that allows us to scale faster than ever. He stared at the document. His hands trembled slightly. You're being funded, he whispered. Backed, I corrected. And they're naming me one of their lead innovation mentors. I'll be flying out to New York next month to speak on female entrepreneurship. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd felt before. Not painful, not vengeful, just full. I had nothing left to prove. He looked up at me, blinking too fast. His voice cracked when he said, I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I replied, calm as still water. I leaned forward. Dad, I built this because I had to. Because you told me I wouldn't make it. And part of me wanted to show you I could. But most of me just wanted to feel free. He closed the folder, sat there for a moment, then whispered, I was wrong. That was the twist. Not that he said it, but that I no longer needed to hear it. He came to work the following Monday. Pressed slacks, a button-down shirt, and that same old leather folder tucked under one arm. But this time, he walked into my building with a badge clipped to his shirt, employee number 49. We started him off part-time, data entry, organizing old client folders, and creating a new operations manual. I paired him with Tara for onboarding. She kept it professional, though she admitted later, it's weird training your dad. He keeps trying to take over meetings like he's in charge. I wasn't surprised. Old habits don't fade overnight. At first, he tried to walk through the office like he still carried some kind of unspoken authority. The interns gave him polite nods. The managers barely noticed. No one really knew who he was, which, in a way, made it harder for him. A few days in, he tried to give feedback on a branding strategy we were launching. I just think you're missing a more traditional angle, he said during a team huddle. Back when I handled campaigns, we always focused on seasonal. That's helpful, I cut in calmly, but this campaign is data-driven. We're targeting Gen Z micro-influencers. We've tested it already. He went quiet, but later that day, he came into my office. I feel like I'm not being used to my full potential. I looked up from my screen. Dad, your role was clearly outlined. I've led teams. I've scaled departments. I could be doing more than typing up checklists and organizing files. I sighed. Not with frustration, but with clarity. That's fair. But this isn't a charity. You're here as staff, not family. He stiffened. So this is punishment? No, I replied. This is reality. Everyone here worked to be here. I won't diminish that by giving you a title you didn't earn. He left my office quietly that day. The next few weeks were tense. He made subtle jabs during break room conversations. Things like, back in my day, we didn't need 3 people to handle what I could do solo. I guess the new way is lots of flair and not much substance. One afternoon, I overheard him in the hallway telling a younger team member, I taught Emily everything she knows about business. She just had the guts to run with it. That was the last straw. Later that evening, after most of the team had left, I called him into my office. He sat down slowly, the exhaustion finally showing in the slump of his shoulders. We need to talk, I said. About what? About the way you're navigating this job. You're undermining team morale, and you're misrepresenting your involvement in how this company was built. He leaned forward. You wouldn't be here if it weren't for me. I raised you. I kept a roof over your head. Yes, I nodded. And I'm grateful for that. But you didn't build this company. I did. And while I respect what you did as a father, I won't allow you to rewrite the story of my success just to soothe your ego. He looked wounded. But I didn't stop. Dad, do you remember when I was 15 and pitched you that idea about making custom digital planners for students? He blinked. Vaguely. You laughed. You told me to stop wasting time on things no one would buy. That I wasn't cut out for business. He looked down. Quiet. I spent years trying to be cut out enough to earn your approval. Until I realized I didn't need it. I just needed to believe in myself. He finally looked at me. Really looked. Emily, I was wrong. Yes, I said gently. You were. And I don't need an apology. But I do need you to respect the team and the structure here. If not, this won't work. Silence. Understood, he finally said. After that, things changed, but not overnight. He became quieter, more observant. He stopped chiming in during meetings and started asking Tara for help without pretending he already knew the answers. The other employees began warming up to him, especially after he started taking initiative on some back-end tasks. But the real shift came when he approached Tara one day and said, "Hey, I don't know how to format this spreadsheet formula. Can you show me?" Humility. He was learning. A few weeks later, I walked past the lunchroom and saw him sitting with two junior associates, laughing. Not leading, just being part of the team. That was the first time I realized we might actually be okay. The final confrontation wasn't dramatic. It was a conversation over coffee in my office a few months in. "You built something incredible, he said, looking around at the framed photos of our events. "I see it now. I wish I'd seen it sooner." "Me too," I said, not bitter. Just honest. "But I'm proud. Truly. Thank you. I know I came here because I needed a job. But staying here, it's taught me something." "What's that?" He smiled, a little ashamed. "That leadership isn't about control. It's about vision. And you've always had that." That was the closure I never thought I'd receive. Not because he finally said the right things, but because I no longer needed his belief to validate mine. A few months passed. The office felt lighter. We had hired 3 new interns. Tara got promoted to operations manager. And my dad, well, he stayed. Not because he had no options, but because, surprisingly, he chose to. He no longer tried to run things. He learned how to contribute without overpowering. He stopped chasing titles and started finding purpose in reliability. One morning, he came in early and fixed the office coffee machine before anyone else noticed it was broken. He didn't tell anyone he did it. Tara saw it on the security cam and texted me. "He's different. Like, actually trying." I just replied, "I know." One Friday afternoon, we held a small company-wide lunch in the rooftop lounge to celebrate a new client. It wasn't fancy, just pizza and playlists, but the energy was beautiful. Sunshine spilled over beanbags and patio chairs. People laughed, shared jokes, played impromptu games of cornhole. I stood near the edge, sipping lemonade, watching it all. My dad walked up beside me, holding a paper plate of 2 slices. "You built this," he said. "We built this," I replied. "But it started with you, Emily." I smiled at him. A real one. Not forced. Not guarded. He hesitated for a second, then said, "Would it be okay if I started mentoring some of the younger staff? Nothing official. Just helping out. Quietly." That hit me in a place I didn't expect. The old him would have asked to lead them. The new him was offering to lift them. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'd like that." That was the moment the power dynamic fully shifted. Not in a way that diminished him, but in a way that showed he'd finally grown into a better version of himself, under my leadership. Later that same day, I got a call from a woman named Lisa. She was one of my dad's former coworkers, someone he used to interrupt and talk over in meetings, according to what I remember. Now, she was launching her own consulting agency. "Your dad told me you might be able to help me get started," she said. "He said if anyone knows how to build something from the ground up, it's you." I was stunned. Not because he'd recommended me, but because he'd sent someone to learn from me. That was growth. Not loud, not flashy, but meaningful. I offered Lisa a free session, then scheduled her for a group mentoring program I'd just launched. It was something I'd been working on quietly, helping women like me who were told no too many times to count. I called it Rise Plus Root because you can't grow without being grounded. The following Monday, I introduced the concept during our weekly meeting. "This isn't just a business anymore," I told the team. "It's a legacy. We're not just offering services. We're creating space for people to rise above old narratives." My dad was sitting in the back row. He didn't speak. He just nodded, eyes wet. And for the first time, I realized something powerful. Forgiveness isn't always about letting someone off the hook. Sometimes it's about allowing space for people to change and making peace with how long it took. That week, I set clear boundaries. I made it official that no relatives could hold managerial roles. And my dad? He was the first to sign the acknowledgement form. "It's the right thing," he said. "You're building something honest. I don't want to bend it." He was learning. And because of that, I was healing. 6 months later, everything had changed. Quietly, beautifully, and for the better. Our office moved from a rented co-working space to a renovated building we bought downtown. Natural wood accents, big arched windows, hanging plants in every room, a coffee bar, a meditation room, a mural on the entry wall that read, "Build what they said you couldn't." It had become more than a motto. It was the foundation of everything we were. The team had tripled in size. Lisa's consulting business took off, and she became one of our regular partners. Tara was now my right-hand strategist, and interns from across the country were applying to our summer fellowship program. And my dad? He had found a rhythm in the back office, doing quality checks, training interns, and making sure the onboarding kits had handwritten notes of encouragement. He never asked for more. He simply became the kind of support he had never known how to be. One afternoon, I walked into the quiet conference room where he was sorting materials for a workshop. He looked up and smiled. "Didn't think I'd enjoy this kind of work so much. But I do." "Why do you think that is?" I asked. He thought for a moment, holding a stack of name tags. "Because it's not about being the star anymore. It's about being part of something that matters." That line stayed with me. Later that week, we hosted a small legacy lunch with the team to honor everyone who had contributed to the Rise Plus Root program. We invited all the women who'd gone through the first 2 cohorts. We shared stories, laughter, and quiet tears. During the event, I gave a short speech. "You all remind me of why this started," I said. "Because somewhere along the way, we were told we couldn't. That we weren't ready, strong enough, smart enough. But we are. And we always were. We just needed to see it reflected back in each other." Afterward, my dad pulled me aside. He looked like he wanted to say something he hadn't said before. "Emily," he began, "I spent most of your life trying to mold you into my version of success. I didn't know how to believe in something I didn't understand. But I believe in it now. I believe in you." I felt my throat tighten. "I know it's late," he added, voice low, "but I hope one day when people talk about how this all started, you'll tell them the truth." "What truth?" I asked. He placed a hand over his heart. "That I doubted you, and you proved me wrong with grace, not revenge." We stood there quietly. There was nothing left to fix. Just peace. That night, as I locked up the office and walked toward my car, the mural caught my eye again. "Build what they said you couldn't." I ran my hand along the painted brick and whispered, "I did." A few weeks later, something strange and beautiful happened. My grandmother's old bakery, abandoned for over a decade, was listed for sale. It was small, run down, but it was where I'd first learned about courage. I called the listing agent and bought it without hesitation. We didn't convert it into another office. We kept the kitchen, restored the glass counters, added shelves of books, journaling materials, and tea. It became the Root House, a cozy space where women could write, brainstorm, and cry if they needed to. A space that said, "You're safe here. Your dreams matter." On opening day, my dad showed up early with a box of handmade recipe cards. "They were your grandma's," he said. "Figured this place could use a little of her spirit." He was right. I placed the cards near the window beside a photo of her, the same one who used to whisper, "They'll tell you to stay small. Smile anyway and keep growing." That photo now greets every woman who walks through those doors. And if you sit long enough, you'll hear soft music, the clink of mugs, and the quiet power of stories being rewritten. As for me, I still lead the business. But I take more days off now. I go hiking. I travel. I make space for joy. And I mentor quietly just like he does now. There's one young woman in particular, Jordan, who reminds me of myself. Fierce, focused, and a little scared. She asked me once, "Do you think I'll ever make it?" I smiled, remembering everything. "You already have," I told her. "You just haven't seen how far yet." She laughed. That's something my grandma used to say. I looked up, heart full. Mine too. And just like that, the cycle shifted from pain to purpose. From doubt to dignity. From you can't to you did. Sunlight pours into the root house. A woman stirs honey into tea. Another scribbles in a journal, tears in her eyes, but a smile tugging at her lips. The front door opens, and a new dreamer steps inside. And the story continues,